There's a famous saying that you've probably heard before, and it goes something along the lines of, if you do not study history, you are bound to repeat it. And so let me put that in my own words. Let me actually give you a new perspective on what that really means in common language today. The way I put it is, once a dumbass, you're likely going to be a dumbass again. And so let me show you a perfect example of that, because recently we had some people who bought the top in hex, and then after that they got to find someone to blame, aka me. So today we're going to show you why once a dumbass equates to being a dumbass again, and how that works out. So here, July 15th was day one of the Pulsechain sacrifice phase, which, what do you notice about that, ended up pumping massively on day one of the sac phase, but ended up being the top and dumping off after. Well, what do you notice about Pulse X sac phase? It also did the same thing. It pumped massively and then it dumped off after. And so a lot of people end up buying the top, holding their bags, and blaming someone for it, when the truth is, if you studied history, you wouldn't have to repeat that same mistake again. And so today, this is actually a blessing. This is your opportunity to get back at the market, because today or recently, the market just kicked your ass. And so now, like I said, you have a shot at redemption, because now you can study history, study the past, and use that to your advantage. And so today I'm going to show you how to do that, and I'm going to give you a step-by-step breakdown and analysis of this hex chart and exactly what I'm expecting, as well as where I'm going to load the bag pretty heavily. All right, so let me show you guys what's up here, right? So, all right, if history is literally repeating itself exactly, you see this massive run up going into the sacrifice phase, and then a dump. All right, massive run up into the sacrifice phase, dump. Well, what do you notice happens after? It sets a bottom shortly after, and it goes on to make all-time highs. Now, the way history is repeating itself pretty much exactly right now, it's not unfair to say that this is literally repeating itself. And so if we just literally copy what happened last time, massive spike into Pulsechain sac, drop, pop up. Massive run up into Pulse X sac phase, drop, and you could be looking at that pop here eventually. Now the question then is, when is that pop coming, and when is that next run to a new all-time high coming? Well, that is why we're going to study the past to find out. So let's break this down and let's look at the sharp little details that many people aren't paying attention to. So what do you notice about the high that was set here? Well, it was set at around 19.5 cents. And shortly after, it dumps 63%. Okay, and it stabilizes and really sets the official bottom around 46% lower, right here at 10 cents. So 63 and 46% are the percentages we're going to use from the past to apply to the present to get a gauge and an estimate as to where the bottom could be set here this time around. So we set the high at 35 cents. We dropped 63% there, and that's going to take you down to 12.8 cents. Now, 12.8 cents, we're going to mark a line of support there, and we'll come back down to that later if we need to. Now, the next measurement we said was 46%, where it really stabilized and set the bottom. So let's apply that percentage as well to the most recent high and local top, and that's going to get you down to 18.19 cents. So let's also draw a support level right here, and this kind of gives us a good estimate as to where the bottom could be at these major levels of support. And what do you notice about this level of support? It coincides pretty damn closely and nicely with that bottom at 12 cents. So this is, in my opinion, your worst case target to the downside, and this right here is where we're very likely to set the bottom at around roughly 19 cents. Now 19 cents is very close to 20 cents, so round it up. I think you're looking at a pretty good bullish support level at what was the previous all-time high, right? So that makes sense. Previous all-time high then becomes the new support at around this new psychological level in a round number of 20 cents, right? So that makes sense, and that does look quite logical if we can take out our emotions and look at this chart objectively. So, like I said, history is repeating itself exactly, and so it wouldn't be unfair to assume that we do get this 43% drop from the local top, and that's why I think it's very likely we come down to 19.20 cents. Now, we did just come down to around 21, 22 cents, so that could have been it right there. But I want to look at this even more closely, and what I want to do now is measure the duration of the dip after the sacrifice phase. So when you hit the high here on July the 15th, you're going to see you had this, bear market, and I don't know if you can really consider it a bear market, but because it only lasted, you can see here, 23 days before setting a bottom. Now, let's apply that same time frame, since history is literally repeating itself almost exactly, and let's apply that 23-day measurement from the local top here, and 23 days is going to get you to right here, January 21st. So let's go ahead and mark a vertical line there to add to our analysis, and this is where we look for an entry into Hex, because with history repeating itself exactly, and things literally look so similar, right? Obviously, they're not going to look the exact same, but I mean, that's as similar as it gets when you're breaking down these charts. And so it makes sense that around this time frame, around this support level, is going to be a great time to pull the trigger and enter, at least for myself, and that's what I'm looking for. And so look at this date right here, January 21st. What do you know about January 21st? Well, I bet you don't know shit, because you're probably not paying attention. So let me show you. What does January 21st mean? That means that's going to be around 1 month before this sacrifice phase ends. Now, what do we know about the sacrifice phase ending is that means Pulsechain Mainnet is likely to launch right after the sacrifice phase ends, because that means, look, everything's ready and we should be good to go. Richard Hart just said on stream recently that we had 2 months to go. Now, I know he's been saying 2 months to go for quite a while now, but that actually adds to our analysis, right? Because he says, look, right here, we said 2 more months, and so what do you know? We run up going into that 2 more month time frame. Here, we said 2 more months, and we start running up. So this whole 2 more months thing is actually a good thing whenever people believe it. And that's the key, right? Because here, we were also saying 2 more months, but no one believed it. And you can see that through the price action, right? And so now, when you have the actual sacrifice phase ending, you have a very good chance that people are going to believe it. And so here's the thing, you don't need Pulsechain Mainnet to actually launch. You need people to believe that it's actually going to launch. Because, for example, if you've been around here in August and September, this whole pump from 10 to 52 cents happened. Why? Well, because everyone thought that Pulsechain Mainnet was 2 months away from August, and everyone thought that they were going to get their copy of Hex onto the Pulsechain network. And so, what do you know? Here we find out 2 more months to go. It'll be ready in October, September. And so what do? We start running up into that, and we lose momentum and cool off because it got delayed. It wasn't going to actually be there, right? And so what do you notice? Well, things run up in expectation and in lead up to something happening. For example, Pulsechain sacrifice phase, it runs up in expectation of it, and after the event actually happens is when it dumps. Right here, Pulsex sacrifice day 1, guess what? It runs up before the sacrifice phase and before it actually happens. Once it happens is when it dumps, and so you have to understand, if you want to be in the pump before it happens, you got to be in it and looking for these things before they happen. You can't be buying after shit happens. That's a sure way to lose and a sure way to get dumped on. Now, keep in mind, once again, what is the catalyst that took us from 10 cents up to 52 cents? It was the belief that everyone was going to get their Hex copied over to the Pulsechain Mainnet, and it was the belief that the Mainnet was very close to being live. And so now you are closer than ever before to actually going live in the Pulsechain Mainnet, and the belief is only going to go stronger as we approach the ending of the sacrifice phase right here for Pulsex, right? And so right now, I believe that people believe that March is where the Pulsechain Mainnet is going to come. And so let's mark that line right here in March. And this is kind of our prediction and guesstimate as to where the Pulsechain Mainnet will launch. And so what do you notice about this? Well, let's look at this. Let's look at how long does it take for price to start pumping before the event happens. Well, right here, okay, if we rewind it back from the bottom, we started running up 20 days before the Pulsex sacrifice phase. So about 1 month before the actual event. Right here, we started running up about, let's see here, 19 days before the event actually happened, right? So here, you run up 19 days before the sacrifice phase. Here, you run up 20 days before the sacrifice phase. So what do we notice? You run up usually 1 month before the actual date of the event. And so, what do you notice? Well, if you take our guesstimate and our prediction for when Pulsechain Mainnet will go live, which we think it will be after the sacrifice for Pulsex ends, So if we take 20 days, right, is what we're saying, right? It was a 19-day run up into the event here, 20-day run up into the event here. Well, if we take March the 2nd or March the 1st, okay, the beginning of March we'll say, and we subtract, let's say 19 days, 20 days, it's going to get you to around February 9th as the best point to be, accumulating before the run up, right? And so I rather be getting in earlier than later. I rather be getting at the bottom instead of the tops. And so for me, right, look at where we've kind of marked this down, right? So here, remember, it took 23 days. It was a 23-day bear market, right, which is not long, right? And so here, once again, we measure that 23-day bear market, and that gets you to this yellow line here, right? So let's actually go back to this right here, right? March the 1st, we'll say, okay? And let's subtract, once again, 20 days from here, okay? And that gets you to around February 9th. So let's mark a vertical line right here, and voila, guys. What do you notice? This gives you a perfect range of where you want to be entering, in my opinion. So let's mark this line blue for Pulsechain Mainnet, and let's mark these yellow lines as dates as to where the bottom and where your entry point is going to be. And so to me, it looks like the best point is going to be this area right here to enter if we can get there. Now, on top of that, we don't have to get down in here, okay? We can also, kind of like last time, you can see right here, see how we came down to support and we set a double bottom, right? So we went here, came up, bounced, came back down, double bottom, and went higher. And so it's very possible we do something very similar to that this time, and we also see this double bottom form again. So it could be like something like this, okay, and then we actually pop off into Pulsechain Mainnet. Do you see how we can use history to make estimates and guesses as to where the bottom could be and where history will repeat itself yet again? And so look at this, guys. All right, you can see that right here where we set the local top, July the 15th, all the way until this top right here. Okay, it was 66 days. So from the local top to the ultimate top, it took 66 days. Now, let's take that same 66-day measurement from this top right here. So here, 66 days, guys, this is pretty incredible stuff. Look where it takes you. Literally, okay, right, just barely past our Pulsechain Mainnet prediction. And so doesn't that make sense that you would run up into the Pulsechain Mainnet just like we always run up before major events here? So here, Pulsex Sacrifice, you run up for a month before it. Here, Pulsechain Sacrifice, you run up for a month before it. And so here, wouldn't it make sense that you'll also run up a month before Pulsechain Mainnet? You're damn right it would, especially when you have history repeating itself exactly as it did last time for Pulsechain Sacrifice phase. You got a very high probability that you're going to run up into Pulsechain Mainnet, especially when you consider the fact that here everyone thought Pulsechain Mainnet was coming. And so you're about to have the same exact catalyst repeat itself yet again, and the timing all lines up perfectly, right? And so it's like a fish, and I got to be careful with what I draw because a lot of people will be like, oh, look what you drew, dude. Oh, so I got to be careful. But, I think you can see how these things line up, and you can see by applying the dates and measurements, it has a lot of cohesiveness, right? You can see that we're likely to set the bottom somewhere around here, and we're likely to run up into Pulsechain Mainnet there. And so let's take a measurement here, guys, and let's see how much we ran up from the bottom. So we ran up from the bottom around 376%. So let's do a couple upside targets. So let's say the bottom is at 19 cents, and we go up 370%. It's going to give us an upside target of, right here, 93 cents, okay? So let's do that in red as an upside target before Pulsechain Mainnet. Now, just because we're applying the same percentages that happened last time to this time doesn't mean it's going to repeat itself like that. For example, right? Let's give you a great example of how percentages don't necessarily repeat themselves exactly, right? So here's day one of the Pulsechain Sac phase. Now look how hard price pumped here. It pumped 60% in one day. Whereas when Pulsex Sacrifice went live, it did not pump 60%. It pumped more like 28, 26%. Does it make sense? So the percentages could be even cut in half, for example. So if this was 370%, let's do half of that, given that price is double now, right? And the more, the more expensive you are, the higher the price you are, the more economic energy and money you need to move the price further, right? Typically. So let's do half of 370%. That's going to take us to 185%. So where does that take us to? New all-time high, right around there. And that makes a lot of sense because this time, Pulsechain Mainnet is very likely to come. This time, much like all times, you're very likely to run up into Pulsechain Mainnet or any other event for that matter. And when you see the fact that history is repeating itself exactly, I want to apply one more thing, which is literally copy and paste what happened last time, kind of like copying your friend's homework, okay, and literally just copy this and now drag it over, okay. So let's drag over this, right? So you see how we have the top right here, okay. So let's line up the top right here. And so what you're going to notice about this is this does account for the time length. And look at that right there. Do you see how the time frame matches up perfectly with the Pulsechain Mainnet launch date that we're assuming is going to be right here in March? Isn't that incredible? When you copy the past and you paste it into the present, it literally takes you right there. And that is pretty crazy. Now, one thing I'm going to point out here is that this is, we're at double the price now. So double the price means half of the move, right? So for example, here it was 44%, 46%. Here, when you take that same measurement, well, it's only a 22% drop, right? So by copying and pasting your friend's homework from last time, you're actually going to have a different scale factor. And so what I want to do now is apply the actual percentage from last time, right? So last time, once again, it was a 46% drop, and we know that, right? So let's use that to our advantage, and let's understand that price is much higher now. And so now if we use that same 46% ratio in percentage, it gets us like down to here. So really what I want to do is adjust the pattern, right? So that we have the same scale factor and ratio as last time. And then what that really looks like, in my opinion, is like this, right? Like that. So now obviously if we're adjusting the percentage of the down move, okay, then we also need to adjust the percentage of the up move, right? So the up move here was 360%. And so if we do that here from this bottom, where we think it's more likely to be because we're changing the percentages to line up with last time, once again, it takes us to that red level. But let's assume we pump only half as much, because we saw that right here, right? Day one of both of the sack phases. Last time you pumped 60% on day one of the sack phase. Here you only pump 30% on day one of the sack phase. So let's just say it does half as good this time, gets you to around the all-time high. So guys, this has been a very lengthy analysis, and we've used a lot of numbers, a lot of measurements, a lot of percentages, and I bet 80% of you don't like that. And that's probably the reason why you suck, okay? And I'm not trying to be too rude, I'm trying to be truthful and honest with you. Okay, because it's so much easier to tell yourself a story. It is so much easier to paint a narrative, to make things sound better than they are, instead of just going with the facts. And the fact is, history is repeating itself to a T almost, And so it's pretty crazy because, like I said, this pattern, like once again, let's copy our friend's homework. Let's copy and paste this pattern. Do you think this pattern knew that Pulsechain Mainnet was going to come right here? All right, or at least where we think it's going to come? This pattern, when we copy and paste this, the past has no idea what the date Pulsechain Mainnet is going to come, but it lines up perfectly with the information that we have, the logical assumptions that we can make, right? The chart cannot make this logical assumption that Pulsechain Mainnet is going to happen March, right? But we know that Pulsechain Mainnet is likely to launch there. And so when the chart automatically lines up with the extra information we're given, it's a very powerful thing, guys. And so, like I said, it's a lot easier to tell a story, get behind a narrative, and go off of emotions, right? It takes 2 seconds to do that. You just say, do this, Hex is the best, this and that, and it takes 2 seconds to do that. Whereas here, it took us 20 minutes to really break down and study the past and apply it to the present to get a very good feel for the market. So to wrap this all up, to get to the bottom of what I'm really trying to get at you in this video is you may not know exactly when the bottom is going to be. You may not know at exactly which penny it's going to set the bottom either. But by applying your understanding of the past, you can get a very, very good feel for the market. Okay, and because why is that? Well, because right now, for example, price is double what it was here in this last example that we're looking at and applying to now. Right? So price is double. That means the numbers are different. But you know what's not different from last time is human psychology, market behavior, and behavioral reactions. Those do not change, right? The numbers can change, right? We can be at a higher price, but overall market psychology, overall movement does not change. Whether you're at 20 cents or 40 cents, it's going to be extremely similar. Now, look, if you're at 20 cents and, $500, okay, there's probably going to be, quite a difference there in the percentage moves because there's a lot more economic energy involved there. Whereas here, I mean, we're talking about a difference of just a double, right? Not, some 500x where, it's going to be a lot different there. Although I would say that the movement, right, the patterns and the shapes are going to be very similar whether you're at 20 cents or $500 million. The actual patterns, right, will look very similar. And that's because market psychology does not change. And so, yes, the numbers can change, but the actual structure, the actual movement is likely to be the exact same or very similar to it. And that is exactly why I think we're going to see a massive run up into Pulsechain. We're going to take out that all-time high or at least get very close to it. And that's exactly why I'm looking to load my bag around this time frame between January 21st and February the 10th. I want to be looking for an entry at support, and that, guys, is an objective plan that makes sense. It's extremely logical, and it has an extremely high probability of playing out when you have so much cohesiveness in a chart, and when the chart doesn't even know that Pulsechain Mainnet is likely coming here right after February the 25th, at the beginning of March, but the patterns and the movement lines up exactly with those dates. So, guys, that is a very in-depth analysis, but I hope it all made sense, and I hope you're seeing what I'm seeing. So remember, you may not be able to call the bottom exactly, you may not be able to call it to a penny, but you can feel the market and get a very good, idea of where that bottom will be. So at the end of the day, let's try to predict the future. Let's try to draw the future. Well, I think it's going to be very similar to the past example. And so let's draw it, guys, and let's come back to this in 2 months from now. I think we're going to see something very similar to, this, something like that, okay? So it may not be exactly like that, but the overall movement, I believe, is going to be very similar. And that is my breakdown of Hex going into Pulsechain Mainnet. Guys, if you enjoyed this in-depth walkthrough, make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe, and hopefully you learned something new here, guys. And final thing I'm going to point out before we end off this video is I can already imagine some Hexicans making fun of me if we don't even reach, support, or maybe I'm wrong and we don't get something similar to this. But so far, it is repeating exactly, so it's very fair of me to assume that we'll continue on this trajectory, right? But I can already imagine people making fun of me and saying, ha, 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 you missed it. You should have just bought, shut up, and staked and chilled, right? But you got to understand, guys, you're a deadly man when you can lay down mousetraps. And even if the mousetrap doesn't catch anyone, you can still use that mousetrap somewhere else. So the mousetraps I'm setting here, they may not be, hit. But you know what? It's okay to have a mousetrap that doesn't get hit. You can always go take that mousetrap and set it somewhere else. Whereas a guy who sets up a shitty mousetrap at the top, yeah, good luck. You got to wait quite a bit of time to get bailed out. All right, before you can actually catch a rat again. And so you got to understand that it's okay to miss out on setups. It's okay to miss out on trades if you're setting good mousetraps that give you an extremely high probability of winning. You don't want to set up mousetraps that have to, where you got to sit on your hands and sit on your backs for a while before you can finally eat again, right? I'd much rather miss out, let the mousetrap not trigger, and go take that mousetrap somewhere else, and you just move on and carry along. All right, you got 1 full year, and if you can make 3 great trades in a year, you are going to get extremely, extremely far. It's about quality over quantity, and what I've laid out here is a quality master plan, and that is exactly what I'll be planning to do. Whether it happens or not, That is a quality game plan, and I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Drop a like. Make sure you are subscribed. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at CrashesClay69. And that is going to wrap it up for today's video, guys. That is my prediction and analysis on Hex. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.